integrate myself into the world of streaming, and I decided to do so with a topic that I'm honestly not very good at. But just because I'm not good at doesn't mean that I wouldn't welcome it on the channel. And I'm pretty sure that this may push someone's button out there, and you may be the person who's extremely excited about this topic, or you know a lot about it, or you have your own theories. So I thought I would bring this here and let you guys pretty much take over, and I hope that you do, because as much as I have thought about this before, I really don't feel like I have much substance to express on this matter. So, when it comes to time travel, parallel universes, and all that stuff, I honestly think that when it comes to time travel, I'm not entirely sure I believe that thing is something that's realistically possible, because I think of something such as time as exclusively progressive. So if this is something that progresses and nothing can slow it down or go against it, then why would I be concerned about thinking about going back in time or going forward in time? Like, I cannot think of time any different than what I know it as, which is all of my timers, unless I set a countdown type of timer, then time marches forward no matter what. So I like the idea that people have made movies exploring the possibility of traveling back into the past or a very distant past, or like going into the future. But when I try to implement my mind and my personality into this movie, whichever movie it might be, I guess I ruin it for myself, because I know that time is something that is constantly moving forward. So, unless I'm focusing on just indulging on the content of the movie itself and be like, oh yeah, traveling to the past is cool, traveling to the future is cool. Like, I ruin it for myself in real life, contemplating a time travel scenario, because I just accept that it's not really possible. And if it were possible and it's done as presented in the movies, which is, oh, when you go to the past, make sure that you don't change things a whole lot, because it will create a separate timeline, an alternative reality to the one that you lived in. It's something that really takes too much effort to wrap your head around. And the way movies explain it makes sense, but some stuff I really cannot buy. But if I look at it from the perspective of, oh, me in the present, if I were to travel back by a few seconds, I somehow maintain my material being separate from the person I was, let's say 2 hours ago. Okay, I get to see myself as of 2 hours ago and interact with myself, who is like 2 hours older, two separate people who are the same being. It's it's odd for me that, sure, if I give a hint to me from 2 hours ago about something to do that could change my life and how that's going to alter the timeline, it's just crazy thinking about it. So that's why I feel like I cannot be very opinionated on that matter, but I understand the people who really like to explore that thing. And more so if it's a more significant gap, such as going back by a decade and stuff, sure, I definitely see how that changes things. But when someone says that, as someone who's stayed pretty average, like my accomplishments and contributions are not really all that great, when they present it in movies as no matter how simple the change, you can change the entire course of history, it's like, uh, no, because most of the time I spend is at home when I'm having like my own free little time away from work, and that's pretty much all that takes me out to like possibly affect someone's life or have any consequence on anything whatsoever in a more meaningful way. So that's the type of thing that, again, I'm pretty brain dead at being imaginative about that. But yeah, when it comes to time travel, all in all, I'm really not interested in it. Like, just let the past be, no matter how much you try to change it. If you made it this far in life, then, just keep going, all right? Because, sure, we all wish that we could get some time back to try different things, especially if, say, you wanted to travel more when you were young, but you couldn't because you had responsibilities or you just didn't have money, whatever. Sure, that would be exciting to experience. But at the same time, I'm thinking, if it didn't happen, I just accept it and move on, as opposed to dwelling on, oh my goodness, I can travel back in time, so I really have to take advantage of this. Even if the option to go back in time to make up for some losses that I have, some shortcomings, I really don't think that I would want to go back and replay that, because I'm more excited and focused on the stuff that I'm doing in my present that's going to affect my future. And now I am slowly but surely starting to train myself to not really preoccupy myself with shit from the future. In other words, the sources of anxiety and worries. I cannot say I do very well at that, especially if I have like a pending matter in my personal life, like, say, an important conversation that's being postponed or little things like that. But like, outside of that, building my own future profile, I am in no hurry, okay? Because my days are not guaranteed, especially with the crazy stuff going on in the world. You just never know when your last day might be. Ideally, it's like decades from now, but it's just, it's very likely but also unlikely. So why, again, why preoccupy yourself with that type of thing? So when it comes to time travel, I would go to the past more for the romantic aspects of it. Like, oh my God, if only I could spend one more day with my granddaddy or something like that, because he never got to see me as an adult and whatnot. And I have questions for him. Like, of course, that would be exciting. But in the grand scheme of things, it's like, hey, if I have been deprived of my grandfather, no matter the circumstance, I think that it just had to be that way. And since that's the way of it, what I inherited, in a sense, then I just have to be okay with that and continue on and like not look back. I don't know why, but I think as someone who used to obsess a lot about stuff that happened, I just don't have any interest in going back to being that way. Even if time travel had a positive outcome, I just want to let it go. Now, when it comes to parallel universes, from what I understand, the definition of a parallel universe is like, okay, the current universe that I'm in, like this galaxy, this planet, myself at this age, in this place, this location, whatever, there is like a mirror version of this life that I'm living, but somewhere else. It could be somewhere extremely distant, like another fucking galaxy or something, or it could be another planet, but it may not necessarily be that I am all that I'm doing, thinking, saying is being done exactly the same by another human in somewhere else that we haven't discovered. It could be something like maybe there's fish people who exist in another galaxy, and this fish person is doing the same thing that I am doing, and therefore living parallel universes, something like that. Basically, it's like a mirror of yourself, but just happening in a different place under similar circumstances, but just not, it doesn't even have to be narrowed down to a human. It could be anything. That, to me, I want to say that's more believable and more acceptable than time travel, only because even here on this earth, even though I meet people who are absolutely unlike me, I find something in common with them. And some of the things that we have in common can be pretty darn similar to the point that it almost feels like the script for our lives was shared. And what I mean by that is that sometimes, depending on what kind of mood I am when it comes to contemplating my life, I think of my life, my existence, as something that has been pre written, like some kind of a script that I am just the actress of, and I am performing my little role, whatever. It could be something celestial, it could be something religious, deity related, or I don't know. I really do not know how to put it into words, but you're never going to find this book, this paper with the so-called script of my life. But I tend to think of everything that I'm doing and thinking and saying and feeling that has been like pre-programmed already for it to happen. So no matter how hard I try to avoid some things, to overcome some things, whatever, it's something that I'm just cursed with experiencing, because that is the way that I was designed wherever my, let's say, soul originated. It was like, okay, this is the part that you have inherited, kind of like a job application. Like, here's the description of everything that you have to do on this role, what is expected of you. So in this case, it's like my job description was handed to me before I materialized into the human being that I am right now. And I was told, okay, this is what you got to do. You got to follow this checklist to a T. And then after that, you're just done. But the price was that I was to not remember that such a discussion happened, so that my performance could be, I guess, judged without any bias, I guess. But yeah, I believe in that more if I think of it that way. Like, okay, how many different stories can you really write? You know, at some point, my script is going to interlap with somebody else's. And let's say that you're relocating, like you are going from your hometown to another place. You have a year when that happened, a particular date, a particular time, so on and so forth. Someone out there may be doing something extremely similar to what you're doing, because you may be of the same age, you may have the same interest, you may be experiencing the same kind of transition in life. So therefore, you are more likely, especially given the relatively structured construct that society has, you're more likely to find someone who will have made similar decisions to you or as you, and therefore you will find this person relatable, like so relatable, boiled down to the date that certain moves were made, certain decisions were made, and how this person's story panned out, that it's not difficult to imagine that parallel lives are possible. They could be even within this planet or even outside this planet, assuming that there's more like what we define as complex life going on out there, you know? So that I can definitely believe in. And you don't even have to go very far. Like, you don't have to really even go out of this planet to encounter those types of things. So if I keep it like that, yeah, it's pretty limited. But like I said, this is not really my forte. I don't really dwell on this topic very much, because it's not that I don't find it interesting, but because I know that I don't have any influence over it. I really don't spend much time thinking about it, not even as a hobby. Like sometimes you just daydream and you think of stuff that you wish existed, and like you have your own little world in your mind, and you try to imagine a life in which that world that you imagine actually materializes. But yeah, for me personally, I have become a whole lot wiser about what I decide to spend time daydreaming about, and I would rather be a little more productive when it comes to those thoughts. So, yeah, I just wanted to throw this out here, and maybe one of you guys can leave some epic comment that maybe illuminates my path, and I can come back to this topic with something more substantial. But yeah, honestly, I really don't have much to contribute there. But my ideas will be very simple because it's something that I haven't really explored much. Most of what I know really comes as an inspiration from movies I have seen, and maybe some post movie watching ideas that I may have gotten. But after that, it's like I let it go. So, yeah, really not sure what to express there. So, you guys let me know what you think. Sometimes I think that we're living in a matrix. I have a proposal. Why don't we humans create our own matrix? We can just make advanced AI and let them live like us and see if they behave like us. You see, when it comes to artificial intelligence, this is something that kind of, I don't want to say bothers me, but we keep trying to create non human things to behave like, mimic, anticipate, react like, perform as, yada yada, as humans. But why? Why is it that we as humans, our potential for imagination, like creativity, so on and so forth, is absolutely unlimited? But we're trying to invest in technology that we're going to inject the capabilities that are known to mankind into the processing unit of this thing, like this thing's brain, and somehow get this to be as human as possible, but it's not an actual human, like a breathing, living organism. But somehow we're creating AIs to resemble us. Why would we want to go through that trouble? Why not instead cultivate or like perhaps motivate, inspire actual living, legitimate humans to be thinkers of that sort? Whatever purpose you design an AI to fulfill, like my stupid phone, my assistant, digital virtual assistant, whatever Siri calls itself. Sure, it's cool that I have this thing talking back to me, and its speech has gotten a whole lot better because it used to sound so robotic, but now it uses expressions that are like colloquial and stuff, and I'm like, well, fuck me, right? But I'm thinking, just because I have a virtual assistant in my pocket doesn't mean that I would prefer this over a human. So if you were to sit me down with an individual who looks like a human but is an AI, and I don't know that it's an AI, and I'm having a great conversation with it, it's like, cool. It's like a video game. I know that I'm playing a game. I know that this is not real, and I can learn things from video games. Video games can be inspiring, can be relaxing, entertaining, etc. So AIs, unfortunately, I cannot ever deposit the same level of respect onto them as I would a human being, simply because it cannot relate to the human struggle. Even if this were an AI that for some reason it's like biologically similar to humans. You ever see the movies coming out lately where they try to create like robotic kind of characters, but somehow they're still human because they have human flesh and they bleed and feel pain and whatnot? You will never convince me that mankind can create from scratch just life, an imitation of life that can compete or compare to the way that you begin your own existence. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying that mankind is not intelligent to create something that is good like that, but maybe it's because I'm living in a time when this stuff is kind of still new, like how long has this technology been going on for? Like 100 years, maybe? I'm not sure. I know nothing about like the history of electronics and technology and artificial intelligence, etc. So I don't know. Don't judge me too much for that. But like I'm pretty sure that maybe 500 years from now, assuming that we haven't turned this land into a desert over a war or something, if we keep progressing, then what would our technology look like? The things that impress us now, like say our little ass touchscreen phones that fit in our pocket and we can navigate the internet and take pictures and basically all of the tools that a phone has. What will it look like 500 years from now if we keep progressing at the rate that we're progressing? And I put progressing in quotes because some things I really don't deem as progress if it's generating problems in other aspects of life. But to keep it simple, maybe that's why I don't find myself too impressed by the shit going on in present times. I guess I should be because there's like talking robots and things, but I think what frustrates me is when an AI, a computer, tries to act like it knows me by suggesting things to me based on my online activity or like shopping activity. You're trying to like it almost seems like you're trying to control me, relate to me, know me, but you're not a real fucking human. You were programmed by someone I will never meet, someone who will never get to know me, to at a certain time meeting certain triggers and circumstances. You will appear in my timelines or a post as an ad because whoever programmed you is trying to like in, entice me into spending money, right? It's all a company. But if money was not the driving factor for the development of this AI, then what would it look like? What would an AI functioning that's not trying to sell you something look like? This being integrating itself into a society outside of the business world, what would it look like? Maybe because I have not seen that, that's why I'm not impressed and cannot fathom this whole, oh yeah, AI, artificial intelligence, yeah, woohoo, it exists and it's going to be the thing of the future. Like, no, I just cannot imagine a life in which this thing can become better than a human who like comes into existence by the natural means that we are aware of, so yeah, I don't really know what to say there, but I don't think that, at least in my lifetime, I will be like convinced by this crazy tech, So I'm gonna leave it at that. Basically, you're worried about those robots being too smart, like iRobot or Detroit Become Human. I'm not necessarily like scared of those things. I'm just saying that we are placing too much faith into those things because for right now they work. They are capable of performing certain things and meeting certain criteria, and to a certain extent, because they're not biological, they're not limited by their emotions, their physical state, their aging, their susceptibility to disease, basically anything that could be deemed a weakness that you may have because you're a human being and you break down and so on and so forth. But when it comes to like being replaced by a robot, it doesn't offend me because at the end of the day, that shit is just not sustainable. And we may not see it now, but me personally, I don't think I would be happy going to a place that's exclusively run by a computer because I occasionally have different needs, different expectations when I go out and say I'm shopping or something. I would not want to carry out a discussion exclusively with an AI because my issue may become too complex for this thing to handle. And it happens. Sometimes I go online to say pay for something, and there comes a point where I have a request that needs fulfillment that the stupid automated system cannot handle. I am not sure that even though this data is being submitted, like my episode, my case of how this computer is miserably failing at helping me, and you still have to connect me to a human to be taken care of. Even if we submit more and more and more and more examples to make the AI better, you're still going to have problems that you will not be able to predict. So, therefore, you cannot possibly create these things to replace humans. Now, I can appreciate the fact that things can get a little faster, things can get done a little faster because these automated systems can replace humans in the sense that for simple inquiries, like let's say that we go back in time to a time when you used to have to pay things by phone and you had to talk to a human and tell them your name and so on and so forth. That has become more efficient. But what has not become more efficient is people's problem solving skills because eventually the people who were trained in the old ways, who possessed the knowledge of how to assist somebody, are going to retire, are going to quit, possibly die. Anything can happen. What matters is they're going to be taken out of the team. Are you still passing on that information, that skill, that knowledge to be able to resolve issues that do arise with, say, your customers? And the reason I say that is because sometimes when I have to bypass the automated system and actually interact with a human being and present them my problem, they have to scramble to find a solution for me. So I'm thinking, you're progressing, but only in the division of labor aspect, but it doesn't mean that your service is getting better. It got better in the sense that some things are not as time consuming as before when the technology was more limited. But when it comes to human contact, if you're not maintaining your worker trained and polished and say finding creative ways and teaching them how to resolve conflicts, then you're not really progressing. At least in my eyes, you're not progressing. So an all machine, all computer, online, touchless store, even though most of my trips, I never have to talk to associates, when I do, it's a big deal. So I wouldn't want for this fucking computer to be like, oh, I'm having trouble processing your card. I'm having trouble reading your chip. I'm having trouble validating your ID. I'm having trouble, all those little things that computers just love to fucking fail at. Why would you want to replace your smart workforce with something that may or may not work? And it's dependent on certain circumstances. So maybe the effort that you're putting on replacing your human employees by relying on artificial intelligence, how about if you just offer things to make more actual humans feel like coming in and working for you and remaining productive? How can you promote your goal as a positive thing so that people can be excited to be on board with this? Like in modern days, some of the discussions are, well, we need to figure out ways to have people find other jobs or try different fields, things like that. So therefore, we want to have like the world as we know it, where people get a temporary job when they're young just to get a little bit of experience, so on and so forth. Like, just because it's something that's been done forever doesn't mean that the method is dated. But my concern is that all this investing that we're doing for technology to like take over, it's good for some things, but it shouldn't be the thing that ultimately takes over. It shouldn't be the thing that replaces your humans, because your humans, no matter what, will be more superior. Maybe your human may not be as good and quick at math as your stupid ass computer, but that is simply boiled down to that individual's skill and expertise. Get to know your fucking worker. Figure out what their strengths are and what their areas of opportunity are, and this thing can keep working. But I feel like we're finding more ways to like get rid of humans, but we still want humans to somehow contribute. Like, if you replace a certain workforce with like machines and kiosks and stuff, you want people to spend, but every time that you take away that opportunity for a person to be occupying that role and making money to possibly recirculate into your company's economy, just to give a very basic example, then are you really progressing? You're taking away an opportunity for someone to literally recycle their paycheck back to where it came from. Like, I know for a fact that I have spent many of my paychecks at my place of employment. So I'm definitely contributing, but if you were to take away my position, sure, now I have to scramble for a new place to give me a few pennies and whatnot, but that doesn't guarantee that I'll be here or coming back as a consumer of this organization. So, it's. Are you really thinking about the consequences of some of the decisions that are being made when it comes to like developing AIs as a form to compete or surpass humans? Like, nah, man, your little programmed being is only going to be as good as you let it be. Whereas an actual, real, biological human, their potential is endless. But your AI, sure, you can program it a certain way, but I don't think it has quite the same endless potential as we do. Anyway, hopefully that made sense. I'm not very good at really describing that because it's not something that I pay much attention to or mind too much. There's a movie called Ex Machina that displays this as well. Heard of it, never seen it. Yeah, I don't believe humans can replicate making a human being. That's beyond us. And even if it were, I feel like we wouldn't know how to manage that. Like, we can barely manage our lives as it is in the modern days. Like, oh my goodness, I don't have enough time for this, or I don't know, just shit. I feel more ignorant at my age than my parents and grandparents were. And what I mean by that is that based on the knowledge and tools that they had available in their time, they were much more ahead than I was. The advantage that I have is that some of the things that they had to wait a little while to find out about, I can find out in seconds. But just because I can fill my brain up with more information at a faster rate does not mean that I'm being more productive with the knowledge that I acquire. So, is it really a good thing that we can feed our brain with so much stuff that, okay, we are by definition more knowledgeable, but it doesn't inherently make you more skilled or prepared, you know? So that is my biggest concern when it comes to that type of thing. Uh, let's see. Yeah, like, would you really want a robot replacing a heart surgeon? I wouldn't trust a potential malfunction. Yeah, like, I want to say I would trust the robot to collaborate with the heart surgeon. And what I mean by that is, if in the medical field, steadiness is important, if you have a tool that assists you with, say, whatever involuntary muscle movement you may have, or like trembling and stuff, why would we deprive someone who is knowledgeable and qualified to perform a job? Why should we condemn them to not manifest their skill just because they don't do well at one little thing that may be out of their control? Like, maybe this is someone who's just naturally jittery, or maybe they have a nerve thing. So this person who has the knowledge, the education, and, you know, getting certified to practice medicine takes forever. It's like a decade. We're going to reject this person simply because physically they're not they're not able to perform the job. Like, say your hand shakes too much to be able to, like, stitch someone up the right way, or whatever the hell happens, in the medical field. If you develop a tool that can collaborate with this person, who, say, while this tool is performing the surgery, the doctor can be like, oh, I identified that here's a problem, here's a contaminant that the machine cannot detect. Like, could a machine detect that, I don't know, the the room is like filling up with smoke and there's a fire and we gotta run, and say, I don't know, you have the wrong blood transfusion material going on? Like, seriously, how good can machines get? And I will tell you guys that I would never go to a restaurant if I find out that the chef is a fucking robot. Although the human is more likely to make mistakes and potentially even contaminate things, I have found terrible things in my food that bypassed humans. So imagine a fucking instrument, especially if you have screws and you need to, like, be cleaned up really good, and maybe you have something loose going around and something falls and it lands in my food and this fucking robot doesn't catch it. Like, just no. I would rather entrust my health to a human, which I have been doing it for a long time, and I cannot say that I get sick from eating out very often. Therefore, the people preparing my food are clearly qualified to do that. Could we say the same about a robot? Possibly, but again, eventually the special circumstance is going to present itself to where this computer may not be able to figure shit out. And I don't want to be the person that happens to. So, nah, forget about it. Just no, leave shit as it is. The AI is as good as its programmer. Yeah, like, when I was in high school, I used to be told that the calculator is only as smart as the operator. And it really makes a lot of sense. So I feel like some of the fucking humans who are running the show these days really feel like they're God on earth or something. Like, you really think that you have so much freaking power. Like, sure, some of the stuff that we have achieved is impressive. Like, um, vaccines against diseases that used to outright kill us in the past and, say, leave us paralytic. People who have like physical limitations have an opportunity now to be more self reliant. That stuff is freaking cool, all right? But there's some stuff that is also altering the psychology of a human being. And we are pretty dismissive about some of it. Like, say, anybody who says, "Oh, I find that my job overwhelms me these days," no matter what level you are. If you're like an employee at the very bottom or an employee at the very top, you're like, fuck, I'm aging, I'm stressed, I'm looking terrible, I'm gaining weight, I'm not sleeping, I'm mentally a zombie. Like, I cannot even remember what I had for lunch or dinner, or I cannot even memorize my significant other's phone number. Y'all are normalizing that shit. And I am asking, why? Why is that okay? So, is that the reason why you're creating AIs to keep up with information that should be basic enough for an individual to carry with them? What? No. Exercise your brain, exercise yourself as a human being to be more efficient with that shit. Like, put it this way. This is how I think. It's very simple. If we have been able to make it and survive for so many thousands of years, why is it that all of a sudden, if we were to spend a day without electricity, we lose our shit? It's because everything has been wired to depend on our modern appliances. Like, at least for me, if power goes out, I have to come up with a way to cook something unless I have stable things, because I cannot count on cooking myself a fancy meal. And I don't really have skills to be outdoors, cooking stuff from scratch. I just don't. But how is it that our ancestors were able to make it with far less? That is what worries me. That's what concerns me. A lot of people clearly survived their times, but I find that when we hit crisis, we ain't handling it so well. Where is the progress? If you're becoming too dependent on something that is not a part of you, it's becoming an extension of you by definition of ownership. Like, well, I'm good at math because I have a phone with me that has a calculator at all times, or I can access Google and type in a math problem and it can potentially give me answers to it or give me steps to find the answer to it. Okay, what about when you don't have that tool? Do you not think it's important to have a degree of retention skills? Like, what to do when the thing that you're so dependent on just fucking fails on you? So that's what I'm saying. I don't want to live in a world where I'm not self reliant. Like, at least to the best of my knowledge, independent, meaning not depending so much on like technology to keep me warm and keep me fed and stuff. Like, if I ain't got the basic necessities down, that's a problem. So I believe that as a human being, my necessities are shelter, food, water, clothes. Give me those four things. Those four things are fine. All of life is fine because those are the things that are going to keep me alive. The whole reason I have a fucking job is so that I can keep this apartment, shelter, clothes that are clean and, maintain me relatively salubrious with, like, hygiene wise. Second. And then food, I don't grow my own stuff. That's what I go out to work for as well. And then water, I need it as a utility and for consumption. If somehow I could be given those things, just given, my life would be a whole lot different. And significantly less stressed. But someone out there figured out that they can be powerful if they monetize that stuff somehow, because they know that people are always going to be needy for those things. Now we have extended those basic necessities. Now we have created things that generate anxiety within us. So, say we need transportation, we need bills, services like cellular services and electricity. So, that's what I'm trying to illustrate. If our ancestors were able to make it with much less, I'm not saying that their lives were free from suffering and stuff, because, hey, I'm grateful that I'm nearsighted, but I have glasses. But am I suffering from vision problems because of environmental factors? I know that nearsightedness has existed like forever. Like this is a handicap. Let's call it that. In nature, we see animals who suffer their degree of handicap too. So, it's shit that happens. But we still made it from that. A group of people still made it from that. So why is it that our lives now, that we are supposed to be inheriting the work and foundation that our ancestors like gave their lives for, dedicated to, whatever, why is it that we're living much more anxious and depending more on crazy ass medicine that changes your personality and stuff? And like, that's why I'm saying, our AI is being developed because us as humans are failing ourselves. Like, we don't know how to take care of our own damn selves. So as a safety net, we have to create something that at least substitutes us, however temporarily it's possible. Does that make sense? Anyway, yeah, that's the way I look at it, and that's why I'm like, man, parallel lives, time travel, artificial intelligence. Why are we even thinking about that shit? But we're sure working hard on it. Possibly because someone just dreams of having deeper pockets or something. And it's interesting because the very people developing this shit are the very people who do not need to worry about those basic things being taken care of. So, like, y'all are tripping. You motherfuckers out there responsible for life being as sucky as it is for some people, like basically the common man, y'all are just fucking crazy. And I look at y'all as having mental issues. That's all I'm gonna say. Where robotics are less expensive than human workers, you can be certain corporations will implement robotics. Moving to increase minimum wage for menial labor will ensure robotics. I mean, if that's what they want to do, sure. But for me, okay, when I get help for something and I know it's a fucking computer assisting me, sure, I am withstanding it because I don't have a choice. But if I have a bad experience and it was because a fucking computer failed me, I am definitely not very likely to go back upon discovering that they didn't even have the decency of assigning my case to a person. And therefore, I had to go through so much bullshit because I was dealing with a fucking computer. So, if they want to implement robotics to replace humans, and I am individually a person who just prefers to be assisted by humans, I am going to take my business elsewhere. And I'm pretty sure that there's more people who are going to be thinking like me. But there's some people who, if they maintain themselves ignorant, are going to be comfortable with the fact that shit is working until it doesn't. And then when it doesn't, they turn into me where they have an issue that needs to be resolved, but robotics cannot take care of it. So hopefully it frustrates them enough to where they're like, well, that fucking sucked. I'm never coming here again. But what I'm saying is that, sure, by implementing robotics, you're certainly making some things run a little more efficiently, but you're not taking care of the very community that keeps your costs operating. You want to keep making money, but you're taking away someone's opportunity to make money to potentially spend on your organization, or if not on your organization, just circulate it in the economy somehow. I don't know about you, but people who are like anxious and depressed and stuff, some of them may make unwise financial moves that will benefit you. But some of them will become more defensive, more intelligent, and guard their precious resources more. I would say I am the latter. It's like, hey, I'm going through this difficult time, so let me make sure that I don't go out and spend on bullshit. But if I have a say, as long as I have a say, I will definitely keep my consumption minimal. And I have been. So, of course, it takes more than just me doing that. I, of course, get happy when I hear of others who think very similar to me and actually do things similar to me. But I just cannot conceive that an organization that already has a lot of resources is somehow looking for ways to not benefit A, the people that made that possible, but B, just supporting people in general. You're opting for robotics in the name of saving a few dollars or something. Maybe, just maybe change the way that stuff is structured. Like, if you want to have more output of your fucking product in your factory and you don't want humans to do it because humans are slower, then at least figure out a way so that you can use your power to influence, I don't know, to keep it simple, the government into giving people the things that they just need inherently. Because the government is supposed to be there to help the people, right? To, like, I would hope, maintain peace, distribute resources, in a sense, maintain balance and whatever the hell the real purpose of you being the leader is supposed to be. I would hope that it's to maintain discipline, pretty much order and discipline. But you're promoting taking things away from people when people are the very reason that shit that you do exists. Because otherwise, what would be the point? What would be the point of you being able to have like international customers? You're serving them, right? But if all of a sudden these people don't have means to consume your stuff because you demand, say, payment, then people who ain't got money ain't gonna buy. And sure, they could borrow money, like from a bank or something, but fortunately, banks do this thing where if you don't meet a certain criteria, they won't be willing to lend stuff to you. But I don't know. I just focus on the fact that the way that stuff is changing is not really suitable for my personality. So that's why I try to keep myself like informed to a certain extent so that I can make decisions that make me feel good about what I'm doing. But I certainly, as someone who experiences and witnesses and sees people and how they suffer from those crazy decisions being made, it's like, well, fuck you. That's your problem, you know? Like, if that's how you want to continue life, then keep doing it. But you cannot expect for people to be behind your cause when it's hurting more than it's actually helping. So hopefully that made sense. It's one of those pending topics, I guess, that I have. Parallel universe, if they did exist, we certainly wouldn't know it anytime soon. Yeah, I really don't think so because you would need to recognize with the other creature, assuming that this is happening in like a different galaxy or something, you have to be able to communicate that the lives that you guys are living is actually parallel. But at the same time, even if you find a person living a parallel life to you, even if you were to communicate with them the similarities of your life, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's word for word happening as you have experienced it, you know? It's going to vary ever so slightly. Even if two people had a very similar beginning, one of you guys may alter the course of your life by a decision, such as getting married or having a child or things like that. So I don't really think it's possible to live that much of a parallel life that's very similar to other people. The elsewhere will have robotics too. You will take your business to another computer. But fortunately, it is possible to work around those things because me personally, I really don't rely much on anything that's outside the core necessities that I have, like say what I mentioned earlier, clothing, shelter, and what is it? Clothing, shelter, food, and water. So, like, I definitely have plenty of clothes probably for the rest of my life, unless my body just changes drastically to where, I don't know, I gain like 60, 80, 100 pounds and cannot fit in the amount of clothes that I have anymore. So I can say that there I'm pretty okay. When it comes to water, if I can relocate to a place where I have access to a body of water, guarantee you I'm not going to struggle with the hydration aspect or the hygienic aspect. And when it comes to shelter, if I can like get my hands on a place that I don't have to really be like paying for, like say inherit a house since I really wouldn't know how to build it up, I can continue living my life with those little things. And especially like my grandma. My grandma literally has not worked since she was like maybe a teen or in her 20s. And she's like almost 80 now. And she's just been in her home. And all that she's had to spend on has been her utilities. But that's completely optional because she comes from a time when she didn't necessarily have like electricity that she could rely on. So it is definitely possible to not really have business with anybody. And on top of that, she grows her own shit. So it's not like she has to take her business, take her money to a business to be able to keep herself fed. So, as modern as life is, even though it's not a very common occurrence, if you're someone who starts off with nothing, especially young people, like you are not getting anything unless like your folks start dying off because for some reason they're much older than you, it is possible to live a completely like a life free from this stupid economy and stuff. And she doesn't even run a business. So, like, it's possible. I see what you're saying about taking my my business to like another business that will have another form of robotics too. But processing payments tends to be the thing that has a degree of robotics, but it's usually relying on a human operator. Like say when I go somewhere to place a food order, it's usually a human taking my order, processing it, and bringing it out to me. So, sure, there's still a person. That person is relying on a tool, but I don't mind because that tool is not self sufficient. It needs to be operated. But yeah, like whatever, whatever. It is possible to work around it. And these greedy ass companies are trying to find a way to get rid of all of those places, right, that still have humans, I guess, operating them. And it's really sad and messed up, but you know, these people will continue to make it. Government is supposed to supply services they cannot reasonably provide for themselves, like standing army, security, border patrol, police, etc. And you see, have we really progressed if we're still concerned about our security and our lands and the things that we own and possess? So, how about if we just focus on a way to just get along with each other, please, so that we don't end up bombing each other and shit, you know, blowing each other into oblivion? So, nah, man, until we figure out a way to just love each other and get along, I think that everything else that we do in place of repairing and cultivating that is just a fucking waste of time. Well, there you guys have it. This is gonna be it for now. I will attempt to return to this topic. And more prepared because I really felt like I couldn't really elaborate much on this because, like I said, I came here like without a plan, without premeditating any of this. So maybe this turned out terrible, but at least you guys gave me some ideas and some points to kind of go from. So in the future, we shall revisit and have a potentially better time. All right, guys, I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.